This is this is a wonderful document. When Raffles left Singapore in June 1823, the merchants of Singapore presented an address to him. That address, of course, doesn't survive the original address. That was handwritten document. And Raffles took it round to, he's going back to Bencoola, and he took it with him and handed it to the Baptist Mission Press there to be printed in a few copies, obviously. But it only survives now in two. This one in the Tang Holdings collection, and there's one in the British Library.
There's only two left.
Only two left. And what's wonderful about this particular copy is that it still has its silk ties, its initial silk ties, so they're original.
Wow.
And what's nice also about it, of course, is the occasion of the merchants of Singapore saying farewell to their founder.
So definitely no question, Raffles is the founder, not William Farquhar.
Raffles is the founder of Singapore. I mean, we might get two quick facts about that. I mean, Farquhar was on his way back to Scotland when Raffles intercepted him at Penang. And if Raffles had not been concerned with this establishment of a base at the south of the Malacca Straits, Farquhar would have gone back. The second thing is, and this is very little known, when Farquhar became established as resident and commandant of Singapore, he attracted an enormous number of Malays from Malacca, and that was an important part in his claim that he was founder. But in fact, within about 5 months of being in Singapore, Farquhar was petitioning to leave. He wanted to go back to Scotland. And that's an incessant demand, too, in the sense that he writes to the Governor-General, he writes to Raffles, and Raffles finally says in a letter to the Governor-General, essentially, we've got to replace Farquhar, and I'm sending round my aide-de-camp, Captain Travers, who went round, and I think he arrived in Singapore about March or April of 1820 to replace Farquhar. But he found by this time that Farquhar had become entrenched. That's to say, Travers says in his diary, Farquhar had decided by then that Singapore, beginning to be a booming sort of town, there were many opportunities for his family. And he, in fact, wasn't prepared to move. And Travers and Farquhar came to an agreement that Farquhar would leave in September of 1820. And therefore, the so-called claim to a founder of Singapore is, in a sense, he's wanting to get out in those years pretty quickly. So that's one thing against him. And the other thing against him, of course, is that Raffles had Singapore in mind really pretty well right from the start, and certainly by the time he arrived at Penang. Though in fairness to Farquhar, I have to say that, or Farquhar, of course, is correct, is that he saw as early as Raffles did, in fact, in some ways earlier, that what the British needed was a base in the south of the Malacca Straits, because the Dutch, coming back to Malacca, they would establish their political, commercial hegemony there, and so a British base further south was required. Farquhar saw that as quickly as Raffles did, so in those terms, it can be considered on equal terms. But then when they went looking for a settlement, of course, Farquhar was hell-bent on the Karaman Islands, not on Singapore. He claimed later that he put Singapore ideas into Raffles' mind, but the evidence really doesn't show it.
Maybe it was because Cameron Highlands is slightly cooler than Singapore. Otherwise, something more...
I think it was a matter of geographical convenience at Cameron Highlands.
Now, who is this?
This is Raffles' mother, and this really is at the age of her, just before her death, age of 24.
Speaks quite affectionately, signs of God bless you. And
his affection for his mother was quite remarkable. I mean, the 16 letters that survive, and the only letters of Raffles to his mother are in the Tang Holdings collection. The letters are remarkable for the love.
This also says, your little grandchild doing wonderfully well.
Oh, yes. This is, of course, written on board the ship Lady Raffles on the way to West Sumatra, and Sophia, his wife, having given birth to their first child, Charlotte. Charlotte, yes. And of course, the great tragedy of Raffles' life was that of the 4 children he had 5 children he had in Sumatra, 4 of them died there, and only the one survived. She survived because they bundled her aboard ship and sent her back to England. She was said to be very physically like her father. And she survived until she was 19, when she died, with a devastating effect on Lady Raffles, of course. And finally her last child. But, and this is the thing about, of course, the loss of her children was quite enormous. I was looking for the one letter, it's here somewhere. I think that she's writing from Singapore. It must be somewhere else. But it's a great tragedy that the one letter she wrote from Singapore is full of the loss of the children, rather than making comments on what's going round, the Singapore scene.
She remained in Singapore?
She was with Raffles in 1822, 23.
What happened to her after?
Well, she survived, thinking always of her husband and children. And of course, she was tremendously religiously inclined, and became even more so after Raffles' death. And in her correspondence and so forth, it was reuniting with her husband and children on her death. That was the dominant thought of her life after Raffles' death.